Edmond waited till the life seemed extinct in the body of his friend. Then, taking up the knife, he with difficulty forced open the closely fixed jaws, carefully administered the appointed number of drops, and anxiously awaited the result. An hour passed away, and the old man gave no sign of returning animation. Dante began to fear he had delayed too long ere he administered the remedy, and, thrusting his hands into the air, continued gazing on the lifeless features of his friend. At length, a slight color tinged the livid cheeks. Consciousness returned to the dull, open eyeballs. A faint sigh issued from the lips, and the sufferer made a feeble effort to move. "He is saved! He is saved!" cried Dante in a paroxysm of delight. The sick man was not yet able to speak, but he pointed with evident anxiety towards the door. Dante listened, and plainly distinguished the approaching steps of the jailer. It was therefore near 7 o'clock, but Edmond's anxiety had pulled all the thoughts of time out of his head. The young man sprang to the entrance, darted through it, carefully drawing the stone over the opening, and hurried to his cell. He had scarcely done so before the door opened, and the jailer saw the prisoner seated as usual on the side of his bed. Almost before the key had turned in the lock, and before the departing steps of the jailer had died away in the long corridor he had to traverse, Dante, whose restless anxiety concerning his friend left him no desire to touch the food brought him, hurried back to the abbé's chamber, and raising the stone by pressing his head against it, was soon beside the sick man's couch. Faria had now fully regained his consciousness, but he still lay helpless and exhausted on his miserable bed. We are just continuing with this suspenseful moment here, having the stakes set yesterday by Faria saying that should they be discovered by the jailers, he would be removed to another part of the dungeon and they should be separated forever. That giving us context for the suspense here. And all right, I had to check myself before I wreck myself. I was getting a little ahead of myself with these big ideas and these speculations and analysis that I do in every episode. And I was ready as I was reading Dante administering this medicine to Faria in this sequence. I was like, okay, and all of the things that Faria had been teaching him are coming into play now. He's able to administer this medicine. And then I'm like, hold on, wait, just back up a second, Landon. You're getting too deep into this nonsense. This is something that Dante would have been able to do, I think, from being his ship's mate. So not anything particularly illustrative of what Faria has been teaching him. Although I wonder, as far as recurring motifs in Dumas' work, whenever I haven't read a lot of Dumas' work yet, as we've covered, but one thing I have been doing is whenever I see a different copy of a Dumas novel, whether it's the Three Musketeers, other Count of Monte Cristo editions, I always read the introduction to them because it's one of the few little slivers of academic perspective that I can get on Dumas, on these stories. And I have seen scholars mentioning the motif of death and resurrection in Dumas' work. And we are kind of seeing it in two different realms here, right? I mean, we have the almost literal representation of it in Faria here, being on death's door and reviving by the end of it, compared to the symbolic death and resurrection that Dante is going through. I don't know what this means exactly, what that juxtaposition or complementary motif is doing, but it's there, and I guess you have to build an academic career out of something, so we've identified it and pointed to it. So that was enough to build out a paragraph in one of the introductions to one of his books. Here's another bit of info on Dumas that I don't mean to tease information I'll go into deeper later. I don't know that I'll go deeper into it later, but as I'm starting to understand him while reading the biographies, once he started, getting out into society through his, playwriting, through his novels and serialization of stories, he began, leading a little bit of a socialite life. And he surrounded himself with a bunch of different types of people, particularly those, women, yes, we'll go into that maybe later, but particularly people that held positions of subjects he was interested in. And so he often found ways to surround himself with doctors, with scientists, maybe historians, I'm not sure, but Dumas was fascinated with science, with medicine, with chemistry, as is evidenced by some of his lesser-known novels. He has a novel called Memoirs of a Physician, for instance. So I think what he does is he knows how to base everything that's in his stories on real-world science and medicine, but also knows the right balance of fact and sensationalism. So a lot of what Faria is doing here is probably based on real science of the time, real medicine of the time, but he knows how to dramatize it. Okay, I also found some information about the Chateau d'If, but we got to save something for future episodes. Let's use that as a cliffhanger to have you all join me here tomorrow. I'll share some Chateau d'If info. Aren't you excited? I am. We're heading toward the end of Chapter 17. I'll see you here tomorrow. Okay, goodbye. The Countdown of Monte Cristo is part of the Gruntwork Podcast Network. This show is produced, edited, and hosted by Landon Solano. The original text of The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexandre Dumas. Theme song by Magic Solo. If you want to support the show and others like it, visit patreon.com/gruntworkpod. Thank you for listening. See you tomorrow.